Dan, how you doing, sir?
Good. How you doing, Al? Can you hear me okay?
I'm doing real well. Yeah, I can hear you
Good.
perfectly. Yeah, how are things? Rumor
Great.
has it, I watched a video last week, and it seems like you and your brother created a company. That officially makes you a serial entrepreneur, sir.
That is,
You,
yeah.
you have a business starting fund.
Yeah, I
No,
do, and
congratulations.
it's like, I turned 50 this year and had to do it again, had to start over. It's good.
All right. Well, good for you. Well, tell us about it. Let's start there. I mean, you've been in the space for many years, and you created a great company in modern survey, and went over to Aon, and here you are. You've given it another go. So, yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, I've sort of 20 years ago, I think both Pat and I, my brother, who I founded it with, we kind of fell into the HR space purely by accident. And we fell in love with it. And primarily, we fell in love with it because it was a combination of how can we help people, inspire people, storytell, leverage technology to do that. And so all these things just kind of, I guess, lit our fire to some degree. So fast forward,
Mhm.
we finally ended up in a moment when we could work with each other again, kind of post modern survey. And honestly, we sat around for a month or two just talking, thinking about, if we're going to do this, we want to do something that we're so passionate about, something where we can really make an impact, something we believe in. Um, and RADICL was formed, and the idea around RADICL is this is a time when transformational change is necessary. I heard your conversation with Jess, and it was just such a great conversation. Um, but this concept that we have to think about our employees and think about them from a whole person perspective, right? This sort of within the confines of work, within the firewalls of work, is getting too small. So this idea of employee engagement, and while it's served us well, it's just not enough to really understand what makes people tick, what motivates people, what inspires people. So we are optimistic as well, and times are tough. And I don't want to sugarcoat that. And we believe this is a time, it's a movement where everyone can come together. We need help from everybody. And really let's have sustainable, real, lasting change, whether we're fighting for racial justice, social justice, sustainability. So we're passionate, we're hungry, we're eager, and we've had an incredible welcoming with the new launch. So we're
Well,
really excited. So
yeah.
that's it. That's who we
Well,
are.
I saw the press release, and I was honored that you and Patrick shared as you did last week at our People Analytics and Future of Work conference. So I'm, when you talk about the whole self and the virtuous pursuit that you're taking, uh, we are in this place that's very different than 20 years ago, obviously. And we've taken a much more product orientation to the delivery of not only analytics services, but services in general. It's like, how can we create something that's sustainable, scalable, all those things? So, as you're starting up, I imagine you have your ideas and vision, but you're also, correct me if I'm wrong, staying malleable to the needs of the organizations that you'll be serving. Is that a true statement? And how would you put a narrative around that?
Yeah. So absolutely, I think. Let me take one step back from that too. So an approach that we believe in has been this during these transformational times. There's been a mistake. I'm going to call it a mistake when we want to sort of erase the past and blow something up and start over, whether it's internal process and internal products, whether it's sort of larger concepts like engagement, or let me give you a great example, something like performance management, where, for years we need to blow up performance management. But what we end up doing is we end up leaving these craters and we don't replace it. For the most part, we don't replace it. Some companies do really great things there. I don't want to suggest nobody replaced it. But we leave these craters, and all we're really doing is we're giving permission to employees and leaders and managers not to take it as seriously, because there's this narrative that it's not important, it needs to be blown up. So now what we have is this sort of transactional process around performance management where we have to do it, but it doesn't really matter, right? And so what we're not going to do is we're not going to say everything needs to be blown up, let's start over. What we want to do is respect the past, respect how far we've come from engagement. So thinking about satisfaction, employee satisfaction to employee engagement. Then we over rotated and we moved on to continuous dialogue, continuous listening, more data, faster, more often, became chaotic. We didn't know what we were measuring anymore. Then we started to move into this idea of employee experience, right, which was really about those moments that mattered, those interactions that matter, and absolutely we're heading in the right direction, but we're still too small, right? The employee experience, by definition, it's the word employee experience. So we're talking about life cycle measurement, life cycle moments that matter. So we're looking much more holistically, more broadly, that meta layer that lives around all of that. So absolutely, we want to work closely with technology companies, partners. We want to work closely with companies who have internal products and solutions and really help guide, orchestrate, and give direction that leads to sustainable and real lasting change.
So with that in mind, and this is very kind of basic, so forgive the nature of the question. It's just that over the years I've seen organizations apply budget to solve specific problems, and employee experience oftentimes is arguably overly broad. It's esoteric. So the question that I want to ask is, what problems do you foresee your solution, what you have in mind, solving? I'll just leave it at there because I have some ideas based on what you shared so far and last week. But what are the problems that you're going to be going after?
So let's start with some basic ones. I mean, think of the world we're in now, where every day there's so much more stress and realities in life, and how much can you bring to work of yourself? We've sort of reversed into that equation, right? We've sort of measured, well, what's that? How much am I genuinely inspired to do my job based on asking questions, based on internal relationships? Would I recommend the organization? Do I like my manager? Versus actually giving ownership back to the person and saying, well, what do you have to bring to the table today? Like, where are you at from an emotional standpoint? Do you have 3 kids that you need to bring to daycare today? Do you need to go help with something in the community today? Whatever that might be. So as far as experience and what we're bringing to experience is much more broadly and allowing individuals to take more ownership of what's important to them, what matters to them. And there has to be a respect and a two-way street with organizations and with people. So that's really how we're thinking about altering and changing and disrupting this concept of employee experience is number one, giving ownership back to the individual. Number 2, broadening what we think about. And really number 3, being comfortable talking about experiences that make us unique and different and celebrate it more versus make it something just that HR holds on to and is aware of, but we're not okay talking about it. So I think we have to get to a new comfort level of how we talk and how we communicate.
And so when you talk about the employees or workers taking more ownership of their experience, that implies that they will have a means in which to share what that experience is currently and potentially share what their ideal future experience would be given their realities, given their constraints, given their assets that they have at their disposal. Is that what you would help facilitate? Is that kind of current state analysis and future state ideas? And again, I don't want to take you to a place where you don't envision going. I'm just trying to understand how the individual can really advocate for themselves so they can contribute in a way that honors their capacity and capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, so So think about what, obviously we've done a lot, there's been a lot of research on what makes effective teams work. For example, just having a similar belief systems, having a feeling of safety, feeling of belonging, of feeling that we're pointed in the same direction. So these are things, especially from a generational standpoint. We have a generation, let's pick on Gen Z now for a bit, who will gladly, I believe, that will gladly sacrifice what we think about sort of as standard engagement concepts for being connected to an organization that matches their belief system, that matches what matters to them more, a company that's giving back, that's more focused on the future, that's more focused on the long play, 10 years out, 20 years out. What we want to facilitate is open dialogue, open understanding, in a world that's incredibly disjointed right now, and where I think we almost have a tribalistic points of view from a societal standpoint. That is going to, it already is, and it's going to continue to affect how teams operate, if we can't sort of rally around a larger common cause and continue to understand that we have more in common than we do different. So it's really allowing, there's a part of who you are as a person that needs to be managed, and we want to give that power back to the employee. And there's, through technology, through listening, through understanding, through organizations having more open minds, through internal teams being more comfortable with communication. So this is how we're navigating through it. And there's a lot that we're planning to be releasing in the next few months, but ultimately that's the concept, and that's the core of who we are and what we're doing.
Love it. Now, who in your ideal future state is your buyer? You may have heard, as I was talking to Jess, is like, who owns employee experience? And I'm going to bias your response in that. Do you see or hope more diverse, multi-function groups, not only within HR, but outside, involved in designing this employee experience? Or what are your thoughts there? Again, going back to ultimately, who's your buyer / sponsor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is the, obviously HR. Well, let me take one step back too. When anyone's going into business or doing a startup, there's always sort of a category you need to classify yourself as, right? And it gets to that question. And I'm just going at what everybody knows who's listening to this. You sort of say, okay, well, we're coming into the marketplace and there's budget to be spent. It's currently being used for X, Y, or Z. So where do we come in? So you have to go through that thought process when you're starting your business. But we also believe that this is rapidly changing. So the role of HR is getting much more broad. We have certainly moved from transactional HR to more strategy-based HR. Now I believe we're really moving from strategy HR to a much more holistic, full company HR, where they are responsible for programs that really are much more linked to deep culture change and new concepts of thinking about engagement. So I think that our buyer and sponsor will still be HR, but as far as thinking about and managing through and defining what an employee experience looks like, or a whole person experience looks like, it has to be connected throughout the entire organization. So we have to have stakeholders representing the business, different diversity groups, different mindsets, different levels. So that's a critical part of this. It can't just be sort of a program defined and rolled out and operated by HR and transactional in nature.
So if we can just dig into that a little bit, because again, you've been in this space for a long time, and engagement has been the operative term that commanded the budget. We need to understand engagement. We need to understand culture. We need to understand well-being. So that was kind of a lead-in to a broader discussion about what drove engagement, what action planning looks like. And, here we are, 20 years on from those tools starting to gain a technology backbone. And now, to your point, we have much more that we can do, arguably should be doing. However, the org structures that are making the decision and implementing and taking action are largely the same. So my question, in the ideal future state, and you touched on it there at the end, what would you hope to see in terms of that broader coalition? Who would be in the room to design the experience, to identify the personas, to facilitate all this? That's work, that's time, that's effort, that's product selection, that is quantitative analysis, that's qualitative analysis, that's work. And I don't see many organizations creating the space to do the work. I don't see many organizations having formed the teams to do the work. So again, without biasing your response more than I already did, what do you hope to see in the near future? So products like yours will truly deliver on the value proposition. And it's not only about the product, it's really about delivering on that experience, that core value proposition at the end of the day for the benefit of the individuals as well as the organizations.
Yeah. Well, your biased perspective is exactly, frankly, why we're diving into this space. So, we have it's been said for many, many, many years, of course, that people are our greatest asset, and we need to put people first. And let me be clear, there's been some organizations that have really, really lived and breathed that, and it's apparent and it's clear. And there have been others that have just talked about it. So, and if I were to dissect those who have just talked about it, typically that's when they're not bringing a well-rounded, diverse group to the table to really think about, how are we going to roll this out? For example, I'm going to pick on a big company that everybody knows, and that's Google. And as you know, they've recently announced no one's going back to the offices until mid to late next year. And they did this for a couple of reasons. Number one, they did this because they want to let people plan, right? Versus every month we're going to check in, every 2 months we're going to see where it's at. That's very stress filled for people to not know what's going to happen. So they wanted to just make a blanket statement. Number two, they said when people come back, it's going to be different. This idea of people coming back into the office and then just walking into their cube or to their office and close their door and working just like they're at home makes no sense. So what we're going to do is when people come back, we're actually going to make it very collaborative. We're going to have more open workspaces. We're actually going to bring people back for the purpose of people actually working together, collaborating together, ideating together, making real a change together. So it's that type of mentality, that type of thought process that is necessary. And that is being planned. And again, Google's doing this well by bringing different people from across the organization together and thinking about how do we need to work in the 2021 and beyond world? What does an experience look like when we're working remotely? What does it look like when we come into the office? How do we need to change? And then making bold moves and bold steps to actually push that forward. There are plenty of other small companies that are doing similar things. So what I'd like to see is yes, a much more open mind, a much more open perspective, really living and breathing, putting people first. It's you probably heard, Al, you probably heard me use this example before with a relationship. It's not the large sweeping changes that you would take or make once a year or once every 6 months. It's the small little things that you do on a regular basis and a repeatable basis. And so these teams across HR, across the organization, have to be meeting on a regular basis, have to be planning, have to be evaluating. And this is where data comes in, right? Leveraging data, listening, qualitative data, quantitative data, and making decisions based on data and not just gut instinct.
Yeah. And, I was looking down at my notes here, and, when we've talked about this before, and you and your brother, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, was the executive producer on the movie Tuscaloosa, which is fantastic. Super enjoyed it. Obviously, it wasn't a theater release, and you can talk more about it. But for our discussion today, you have, as a white man in Minneapolis, you and your brother have taken a very virtuous stance on the role of white men in particular, but white people in general, on addressing social justice, creating environments of diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly given that white men are predominantly in leadership roles. So if there's going to be change, and change is going to happen from the top, then it's going to be because white men are facilitating and influencing that intentionally, and creating environments where others can elevate to their role who don't look like them, who are women, who are Black, who are Latino. So, what are your thoughts around employee experience and the solutions that you want to see created in the future? Because I know the answer, because I know you want to bring about greater equity and inclusion, sense of belonging. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on something that you and Jess talked about, which I just I completely agree with. Is we have to move away from being afraid to talk about what an employee, what defines a person, right? What defines a person in their life, things that they're passionate about, is much greater, always greater than what defines them on the job. Now they work together, and people should be extraordinarily proud of what they do at work, but who they are as a whole person, ultimately that has to matter more than anything else, hands down. So once we're to that level, and that's a lofty level to be at, that's what I'm fighting for. So like you said, Pat and I was executive producer, and Pat was producer on a film called Tuscaloosa, which was kind of had multiple storylines, but certainly a love story drama. But to your point, was also a movie set in 1972, Alabama, sort of a post-civil rights activist movie that really looks at the world back then, and primarily focuses on a relationship between a Black man and a white man, and how things were changing, and how they had to find where they were connected, and where they were different, and how they could sort of find common ground. And our point, and one of our big themes, was not a lot has changed in 2020, unfortunately, from what we saw happen in 1972 Alabama. There has been incredible change, of course, but we have so much more to do, and so much more work to do there. So it has to be constantly top of mind, and it just can't become a good idea, and we talk about it and we get outraged by it, and then we let it fizzle out. We have to have sustainability with this stuff. So that means we have to listen to each other. We have to put it into practice. We have to challenge each other. We have to be okay saying, I don't understand. I'm not sure I understand your point of view. Having these open discussions at work. So experience has to become much more authentic, transparent, until. And HR has a responsibility in that. We have to break down these barriers around, we shouldn't talk about it, that we can't talk about that. That has to change. So that's a big piece of really implementing this whole person experience, that my hope is will start to really change things from a societal standpoint, and of course within the workplace.
Yeah, I celebrate what you're doing, and I celebrate your narrative on it. And I just want to, highlight this too, is that this is not a situation that is a project to be started and checked off, and okay, we did that. It hopefully, and I know you're working towards this, it becomes a cultural norm, and there is a role for people. It's not just something that Black people and women and Latinos and other minority groups talk about in isolation. This has to be integral to how an organization operates. And historically, organizations in many cases have been hiding places. It's like, oh, we don't talk about that at work, therefore I could just perpetuate these unjust norms. And as we design experiences, we highlight things, as uncomfortable as it might be, that are not just, that are not okay, that need to be corrected or adjusted or even eliminated. So, would you agree with that statement, number one? And number two, as we start to, wrap up, what do you hope, like with your ideal partners, what do you hope are some of the core attributes that they would have in mind for this to actually come to life? Because a lot of people like talking about, they nod their head, they say the right thing, but that's different than actually doing something day after day. When the work gets hard, are they willing to do it? So, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So, well, with the latter point first, because I think that'll also summarize the first point. Um, yeah, I mean, this is going to take a refreshed mindset, and it's going to take organizations thinking about the long play. And I've used that word a few times today. But what I mean by that is it isn't going to be sort of a sweeping change that an organization makes, meaning we're going to introduce mentoring programs, making sure we have white men being mentored by black women, and checklist, and we're done. This is a commitment of small things over and over again. And I know I've said this before, but this is the way we're going to make change. Too often we sort of get in a room, we spend 3 days, we come up with a good strategy, a good checklist, a nice website that we can push out, and a social media post, and we've done our job. And then what happens is you get back to sort of exactly what you said, is the day-to-day, the work's hard. So this has to be a commitment of those small things that you do over and over again. And I spend a lot of time working out and trying to stay healthy. And a great example, an analogy, and I hate to use such a simple analogy like that, but I think it's meaningful, is this idea that I'm going to, if you think I'm going to get into shape and I'm going to go work out for 5 hours tomorrow, I'm going to work out really hard, and then every day 3 hours after that, you're setting yourself up for failure. You have to think about, well, every day I'm going to do something small, and if I can't get it in, I'm going to make sure I do it just a little bit more the day after. And it's this mindset, it's this mentality that leaders and organizations have to take. So it is a constant commitment. It's constantly challenging ourselves. So when we think about our partners and what we want them to take away working with us is that commitment. It's that mindset. And I think I said this on your conference last week. Our intention is not to work with organizations to tweak an engagement survey, to introduce a pulse survey, to build a competency model. There are great companies out there that do that. We need to do a lot more than that. We really need to start changing mindset from the top down and the bottom up, right? How we think about things, how we act, how we work, smaller, bite-sized things that we can actually accomplish, a renewed commitment every day, every week, every month. And I'm an optimist, and we can get there. We've seen what the world and what people can do in an 8-month period with the COVID crisis, and how people can come together and change. So it's not out of our reach as human beings. And this is what we're passionate about. And this is why we jumped into this, because we believe human beings have the capacity and the power and the ability to actually make this type of change if they believe in it. If organizations continue to fight for it, we'll get there. So,
Well, Dan,
that's
I
summary.
celebrate. Well, it's again, I want to celebrate what you and Patrick are doing. I'm interested. Actually, that's understating it. I am enthusiastically curious about what's going to evolve for you all, because you're absolutely right. I have many times over the years been accused of, oh, you're trying to boil the ocean, just get some quick wins. However, I am also well aware, as you alluded to, that there is a systematic approach required. That if we just try and nudge something without thinking about the broader system, it's either not going to hit the mark, or it's just going to be suboptimal in a very poor way. And there's cost to that. There's cost to organizational productivity, and there's cost to human lives, to the human experience. So, yeah, keep up the great work, and just know you have a fan in me. And yeah, I'm stoked for you. As we wrap, you want to share how they can learn, viewers, listeners can learn more about you and Radical?
Absolutely.
I understand there's a bit of a unique spelling there.
Yeah, yes, there is. And before I do that, again, thanks, Al, for the work you're doing in the community. I've gotten to know the community and just incredible people that are committed to the cause, and it's always been refreshing from day one. And it was always about how can we work together to accomplish something greater. And so, again, I kudos to that, and for keeping that mission at heart. And it does make an impact, and it's a big part of this change that's necessary. As far as contacting us, yeah, there is an interesting spelling. So it's RADICL. So RADICL. We just drop the A from Radical, and it is radical.work is our website. Yes, we are one of those new .work instead of .coms. So you can find us there. You can obviously find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. Search Dan Riley, Radical, I'll come up. And always open for a conversation. And again, as I've said many times, this is going to take all of us. It's going to take all the brilliant minds out there. It's going to take all the awesome tech companies doing really brilliant things. It's going to take the consultants who are ready to sort of throw away some things of the past and reimagine things of the future. So I ask everyone to be a part of this movement. We can do it together. There's work to be done, but let's stay optimistic, as best we can. And I think we'll see great progress over time.
Yeah, let's get after it. All right, Dan, you be well. Look forward to seeing you hopefully before too long. So you take care, yeah?
Absolutely. Thanks, Al. See ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you.